now showing up everywhere, right, including in the political arena. Yesterday, remember we talked on the show about Toronto mayoral candidate Anthony Furey. He was heavily criticized for using these AI-generated images that you're looking at now of Toronto that are not real. He used these in his campaign platform. And then last week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign tweeted these AI images of Donald Trump hugging Dr. Fauci again. Not real. So what happens when it becomes harder to tell the difference between what's real and what's fake? Tech expert Sinead Bovell is joining us with some answers. Good morning to you.
Thanks for having me.
So when we look at that stuff, and we were talking about the third arm yesterday, but also, more importantly, the images that were generated for Anthony Furey's mayoral campaign. And then the Ron DeSantis, the image of Trump hugging Dr. Fauci, not real. Why is there such a rise right now in the use of these AI-generated campaigns?
Right. So this is the first, presidential election or local elections here where these tools we've been talking about all year, these exciting AI tools, are now being used to shape the political arena. They're incredibly easy to use, and that's been part of their appeal and why they've gone so viral. But at the same time, it calls into question what happens when they enter into our political ecosystems and some of the challenges that happen with deception or being able to know what's real, what's fake. That becomes a lot more challenging in a world with these very sophisticated AI tools.
How is it okay to be using these types of images in election campaigns?
Right. So we have to, what do we want the boundaries of this technology to be in the context of politics and in the context of something as critical as voting and democracy? What standards do we want to set? Should it be okay that somebody could release images for their campaign without declaring that these are AI generated? We could be very susceptible to believing narratives that actually aren't true, but look incredibly real. So this is quite alarming.
How can AI potentially persuade people from voting one way or the other?
Right. So there's been actually a lot of interesting research that shows AI-generated text is a lot more, or can be a lot more persuasive than human-generated text because it's studied the language of so many people. So this could be used to shape and nudge people's beliefs in a certain direction. And when you combine that with maybe very, very powerful AI-generated imagery, AI-generated video and audio, you could really paint a picture for somebody that isn't actually true, but they're very susceptible to believing. It can be very confusing for us.
This is straight up lying, though, no?
In
a way?
If you don't declare that it's AI.
Well, and that's the thing, Sinead, right? So is it, okay, so that's the whole conversation around declaring this. Nobody seems to be doing that outwardly, at least what I'm seeing. So what do we need to do to make sure that people know what's real and what's fake?
Right, I think especially when it comes to politics, we need to be very clear what's AI generated and what do we want the limits to be? Do we want people to be able to produce these dystopian kind of fear-mongering narratives that scare people into voting? Because I think that's also not a great step in democracy. So what do we want the guardrails to be? I think disclosure is the very bare minimum. And maybe we decide this doesn't actually work for us in our political process. This is something we want to protect. We need to be transparent, or maybe we only keep human-generated content. But regardless, I think we do need to move quite quickly because we're stepping into these election cycles and we're already seeing these challenges.
Yeah, let's talk about the election cycle coming up, especially south of the border, 2024 presidential election. How do you see AI developing over the next little while?
Right, so we've already seen, the GOP about a month ago released quite a scary dystopian video targeting President Biden and what would happen if he won. So I see us continuing to come across that type of content, AI-generated video, AI-generated audio. You can clone somebody's voice, which is 3 seconds of what they've said online or what they've shared. So I see it playing more and more of a role, and it doesn't have to be entirely bad, right? We might see candidates use AI to communicate their message more effectively, real-time language translation. Those are things that are quite exciting. But unfortunately, if it's used to shape people's beliefs in a way that's not actually factual, that will be very challenging and it could confuse voters. And finally, I think what's more alarming to me is that if we become so disoriented in a sea of information, we might unsubscribe from the process altogether. We might lose trust in our democracy or in the voting process. And that to me is very alarming.
You know what? It feels like the start of the internet, right? Like in terms of it just felt like so out of control. Nobody knew what was going on. We had to put laws in place, but we just have to move very quickly because AI, as we know, is moving at a very rapid pace. Sinead, great to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.